Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the video. In this one I'm going to give you a basic overview to Xero. So if you're looking at Xero for the first time, you've maybe taken on the trial subscription, so you've got the free period at the start so you can test the software to see if you like it or not before you commit to subscribing to it, and you're not sure exactly what everything does and where everything is that you might be used to using from another system, for instance, I'm going to take you through and give you an idea of where you can get started. So we're in the demo company here, and if we go over and look at the main menu, first up we'll have a look at settings. Now this is where some of your setup will start when you first take on the subscription to Xero. So here we've got organization settings, and this is where you go in and set up your business name, your display name, your legal name, put in your logo, ABN, address, all of that, contact details, and so on. And then a lot of this info will flow through, for instance, to your invoices that you send out to customers. Go back to the main settings. Users is where you set up the people that are going to have access to your Xero file and what level of access they will have to the file. So you might have someone who has limited access. One of your admin staff, you might just want them to send out invoices, but you might not want them to have access to the bank accounts. Or you might not want them to have access, or maybe you have someone who's doing the bank reconciliations, but you might not want them to have access to your payroll, where they can see sensitive data on what other staff are being paid and that sort of thing. So you can limit the level of access that people have to different parts of Xero, which is very handy. Currencies, of course it'll default to the AUD, the Australian dollar, but if you're working in multiple currencies, you might be doing a bit of working from an offshore base as well. Maybe you might have a factory in another country or something like that. Maybe you're selling stuff in US dollars as well. If you are, for instance, invoicing in US dollars or buying in US dollars and you want to track that in Xero in the other currency, you can set that up to run here. Connected apps. Xero is very good for connecting to outside apps and integrating them back into Xero. So we'll go have a look at the App Store here, and you'll see that there is a lot of different outside apps that connect to Xero. And you can filter by different functions over on the left hand side here. So if you're looking to have an outside CRM system, a relationship manager for your customers, you can see here some of these might be familiar to you already, and then you can link them to Xero. If you're running e-commerce, if you're running external point of sale software, if you're running an external inventory system, you can integrate that so data feeds from that outside system back into Xero. So it's quite good at that. Back to the settings menu. Invoice settings. So this is where you can edit what is going to show on your invoice. You have the basic templates that come built in, or you can export a template out into Word, Microsoft Word, and have more ability to tailor how you want your invoice to look in Word, and then upload that back up into Xero if you want a bit more flexibility on how you want things to look if the standard format isn't quite what you want. So you also have the option to set up a few different templates. Maybe you're running a couple of different operations out of the one ABN, for instance, then you might want to do that. You can also go into your settings and set up your due dates, your invoice numbers, where they want to start from. Maybe you coming over from another system, so you don't want to start from invoice number 1 again. You want to start where you left off in your other system, so you can put in the next number here for your invoice. So it does that. Payment services. So this here is where you can set up things like PayPal, where you might be getting paid through another platform and you want to link it to Xero. Direct debits, credit card payments, things like that. Invoice reminders, which is quite handy. And I made a video on this about going into more information on how to set up invoice reminders and make them work for you. So I'll put a link up the top where you can go check that out if you're interested in that. But invoice reminders can be quite handy in taking some of the burden off chasing outstanding payments from customers. You can automate a lot of it through Xero. And of course, set up a new branding theme, which is just basically another one of these here, another template. Back to the org settings. Payment services, we looked at that. Email settings. So this is telling us where we send our invoices out from, the default email address, what is going to be the reply address. And we also have our basic templates here for when we send an invoice out for a credit note, an invoice, purchase order, whatever it might be. And we'll go have a look at the sales invoice here. And when we click on the email button in the sales screen to send out an invoice to a customer, this is the template that will come up. And we can edit it there at the time of sending out an invoice. But if we want to edit it so that it saves to the basic default every time that we send out a new invoice, we can change the settings here, change the wording that's going to come across in the email. So now we have payroll settings. This is basically where you will set up your main account the payroll's going to run for. So you've got the bank account that the wages are going to be paid out of. Your pay-as-you-go liability account. This is the taxes that are withheld from wages, what account that goes to. Your wages expense account, your payroll clearing account, the liability account that wages are paid from, the super liability account, the super expense account. If you're not sure about any of this stuff here, I would suggest contacting your accountant. You can invite them into your file, into the Xero file, and they will be able to set this up for you. You can also contact us directly to do a setup for Xero. We can help with that. Check out the description down below for a link to our website. Payroll tracking. This is if you want to track payroll via, say, an employee group, or maybe you want to track by like a cost center, for instance. Paystep options, we're showing the annual salary, showing the employment basis, what basis are they employed on, are they casual, full-time, etc. Now the calendar, are they being paid fortnightly, are they being paid weekly, are they paid, if they're paid weekly, are they paid from a Monday to a Sunday, or is it, say, from a Wednesday to a Tuesday, and what day do they actually get paid on? That's where you set that up here. Your holidays, in particular if you're paying full-time staff, and you want to set up the public holidays depending on the state. Pay items. This is where you set up different types of payments. So you've got ordinary hours, termination payments, overtime, etc. deductions for lease payments, FBT, reimbursements, annual leave, sick leave, and that sort of thing. So that personal / carers leave, that's actually your sick leave. And again, guys, if you want help with this, there's a link in the description to our website. You can book in a session and we can help you get started. And the different superannuation accounts. So each super account that you pay to, so you might have 5 staff, 2 of them might be on the same, with the same super fund, and 3 might be on a different super fund. So you might be paying between 5 employees across 2 different super funds. That's where you set up the super funds here. Expenses, this is where you go to look at staff that have gone out and paid for stuff using their own money and are then requesting a reimbursement from the business. That's where you set this up here. Xero, and we'll have a closer look at that later. Xero to Xero is where you can link to another business that's also on Xero, so that when they raise an invoice to you or a bill to you, it can go direct from their Xero to your Xero. And custom contact links is also related to linking to not other businesses, but outside systems that you want to link to Xero, and the contacts and how that flows between the 2 systems. So now we're going to go to the advanced settings. And if you're not sure about this stuff, definitely contact your accountant. The find and recode function, this thing is fantastic. In the past, in other systems, when you have realized that a whole bunch of transactions have been coded incorrectly, you had 2 choices. You either had to do a journal to recode everything, but then it's not entirely clear in the system what's been recoded, potentially, or you have to go back one by one and change every single item, which is very time consuming. The find and recode allows you to go back and change every single item, but to do it very quickly. Manual journals, this is just basically posting a journal. You want to have an understanding of how the debits and credits work to be able to do this. Fixed assets, that's where you can input your purchases of assets such as motor vehicles and set up their book depreciation useful life and their tax depreciation. So maybe a certain asset has a book depreciation of 10 years useful life, but you might be writing it off in the first year for tax purposes. That's where you can set that up. Assurance dashboard allows you to look at different people who've had access to Xero and what they've been working on in Xero. So you can see this particular person's been logging in on these days and accessing the bills module or accessing the payroll module. You can see, get a bit of an overview of what people have been doing at a high level. Export accounting data. You might want to export your Xero data if you're closing down your subscription or if you're moving to a new system. History and notes. You can attach notes to various transactions as supporting details, so you can go back and have a look at that here. And now we'll move over to advanced settings, financial settings. So most of this stuff is you want to have a pretty good foundation level of knowledge of bookkeeping and basic accounting, or you'd get your accountant to look at it. So you set up your accounting method here, whether it's accruals or cash, what type of BAS period you're looking at for pay-as-you-go for GST, if you're doing pay-as-you-go income tax installments or not. Some settings around for sales and purchases. Your lock dates, whether you want to lock Xero at the end of the quarter once you've submitted your BAS, so then people can't go back and make changes to previous periods and sort of muck up your BAS. So you can do it across a broad level for the whole system here, or you can do it across everyone except the advisor, who is your accountant. So your accountant might go in and lock it as at a certain date to everyone else, but allow themselves to go in and still make changes so they can finalize your tax return, for instance. and of course your time zone. Chart of accounts. This is your list of revenue, expense, asset, liability, and equity accounts. They're the 5 basic categories. And you can see a list here of all accounts, or you can search by liability, equity, expense, assets, and so forth. So you can go in here, you can look at an account. For instance, we've got advertising here as expense account. The default tax rate is GST on expenses. And you can make a few edits here as well, whether you want to show them on the dashboard watch list, whether that you want it to be an option in expense claims, whether you want to enable payments to the account. Tax rates. This is probably something that you probably wouldn't go in and edit. This is where you have your GST settings for, say, GST on expenses, GST-free expenses, and that sort of thing. Your fixed asset settings, so this is for your assets such as motor vehicles. Tracking categories. This is if you want a job code or whether you want to track a cost center or a profit center. I made a video on this. I'll put a link at the top of the screen if you want to have a look at that in more detail. Report codes, how the mapping from your transaction here translate over to more sort of polished financial reporting at the end of the year. You probably wouldn't be looking at this so much. It'd be probably more something your accountant would do if they're doing your financial reports for the year end. Reporting field settings and conversion balances. And this is where you basically go in and set up your opening balances when you set up Xero for the first time. So if you've come across from another system, then you're going to have some opening balances, and that's where you set this up. So that's your overview of the settings. Back over to the main menu here. HubDoc is a company that is actually owned by Xero, and it allows you to automate the entry of receipts and so forth. So if you have a receipt, you can go into the HubDoc app, take a photo of it on your phone, and have that automatically come across into Xero. That's what HubDoc does, App Store. We looked at that before, and there's some other things here that you might be interested in. So now we're going to go to the dashboard, which is basically your starting point when you first come into Xero. So we've got the bank accounts here on the left, the business bank account, the business savings account, whatever other accounts you may have. Here's where you go to do your reconciliation. If you want to have a look at more detail on how to do a bank reconciliation, I'll put a card up at the top of the screen. But basically, you have 4 options here. The match is when it matches automatically to a payment that's already been processed either through the purchase register or anything that's actually been entered already. Could be through the purchase register, the invoice register, or a spend money or receive money. It's already been entered, and then you're matching it here to the bank statement line. Create is when you're going to create a spend money or receive money from scratch to match the bank statement line. Hasn't been entered already, you're entering it right now for the first time. A transfer is transferring from one bank account to another of your bank accounts. And the find and match is when, say, money has come in and it's not matching here automatically. So we have to go into the find and match and find which item the money relates to, select it and match it off, and then reconcile. So that's the basic functionality there. Cash coding allows you to do some bulk entry processing to sort of speed things up a bit. Bank statements is the bank feed that comes through, the transaction lines that come through. Account transactions are the items that have been entered in Xero. So just because something has been entered in Xero doesn't necessarily mean it matches to your bank statement. You can go to manage account, you can do a spend money, receive money. This is stuff you'd be using when transactions haven't gone through the purchase register or invoice register. You would use spend money or receive money. Bank rules is when you want to automate stuff that probably comes in or goes out on a recurring basis that relates to spend money and receive money or transfer money, but stuff that does not relate to the purchase register or the invoice register. So you haven't raised a bill, you haven't raised a sale. If it's something that comes in every month or goes out every month, like a phone bill to the same supplier like Telstra, you can set up a bank rule to do a search on the word Telstra on your bank statement line. So whenever something comes through on your bank statement line that says Telstra, you can say, whenever the system sees this, I want to code it to the telephone account. A reconciliation report is something you look at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter to see that everything you've reconciled and entered matches back to the bank statements, so that basically what's been entered, account transactions, will match back to the bank statement. Because you could have entered stuff by accident, or you could have done a duplicate entry for something. So if that is the case, the reconciliation report is going to show that. Import a statement is if you do not have bank feeds set up, and so you have to, or maybe Xero doesn't support this particular type of bank for some reason, which isn't as likely these days because pretty much all banks are supported in the main part, not everything. Maybe some of the small banks. I know some of the foreign exchange banks. So if it's a US dollar thing, even like an Australian bank that's providing a US dollar denominated account, with some of them they won't be able to do the bank feed, so you've got to import statements for that, and that allows you to import the transaction lines that you'll see here on the left hand side. Or if you're setting up your Xero and you set up the bank feed, it takes maybe a week or something for the bank feed to activate, so you'll only start importing statements, bank statement lines, from the date that it activates, but it's going to miss all the stuff from before the activation date, so you'd have to import that manually. Go back to the dashboard. So down here we have total cash in, cash out, just showing you a quick summary of your cash flow. Accounts watch list, this is quite handy. Before we were in the chart of accounts and there was a box there asking us if we wanted to add this to the dashboard watch list. So we were looking at the advertising account and it said show on dashboard watch list. If you click this box, it's going to show up here. Now this is great just to keep an eye on certain accounts that you want to have a look at whenever you go into your dashboard. I like to use it for maybe your super liability to make sure your super is getting paid, and also your payroll clearing account to make sure your payroll is getting paid and reconciled to the correct account. So whatever you might want to have a look at on your dashboard, you can include here. Invoices owed to you, bills you need to pay, just a basic snapshot of your draft invoices. Invoices that have been approved but are awaiting payment and overdue. Expense claims. This is where you can go to enter a new claim for a reimbursement from your staff member who's gone out and bought some supplies using their own money and now the business needs to reimburse them. That's how that's done down here. And you can edit the dashboard by hiding certain things and moving around the order in which you see it. So in this analytics section, this is relatively new. We've got short-term cash flow. And you can see here, you can do some analysis based on the period of time and which bank accounts, invoices owed to you, bills paid, and projected cash flow balance. So you can see there we're just above zero. We went below zero for a while. And you can sort of look at the time frame, the different cash flow items of income and expenses and so forth. business snapshot, a quick glance of your profitability, income, expenses, gross profit margin, some of your main accounts and how they're tracking compared to the previous year, information from the balance sheet, your overall cash balance, how long it's taken you to get paid, just a few things that might help you understand the general health of your business. So invoices, quotes, we're going to see that in the sales overview screen. There's little help windows that pop up here as well, which can be handy for you, but if you don't want to see that, just click to hide. So here we can basically see an overview of everything that's happening in sales. We've got invoices at the top, draft invoices, so they haven't been saved, or rather they've been saved, they haven't been approved. They've been saved but not approved. So for instance, one person might have access to raise an invoice, but they might not have access to approve the invoice. So the first person raises the invoice, then it goes through to the second person to approve the invoice. Then once it's been approved, it can go to the customer and you're awaiting payment and you're overdue. Quotes, you can send your statements, you can import data from other systems. You can do a repeating invoice. So if you have a customer that you're basically providing a service, an ongoing service, and you charge them, say, the same amount every month, and you want to automate that, you can turn that into a repeating invoice. So on the certain day of each month, this same invoice gets generated, and it can either be saved as a draft, approved, or sent out to the customer. A credit note. So now we're going to look at the purchases overview. And a similar thing, you got your drafts, awaiting approval, awaiting payment, overdues, so on. That's where you set up a new bill or a supplier invoice. And it also gives you the opportunity to send bills from your emails to Xero. So if a supplier emails you their bill, their invoice, you can, in your email, send that email to this email address, and that'll come through to Xero as a draft, which then you can edit anything that didn't flow through, any data that didn't flow through as it should have, and you can save it in Xero to save yourself a bit more time there. Expense claims, which we've covered. Products and services. This is basically where you set up your inventory. So you can track certain stock items, say like your golf balls, white single, 3-pack, 6-pack, and automate them when you raise a bill, or an invoice rather, to a customer. So you'd select this item, it'd flow through, the system knows that the cost price is $420, the sales price is $560, and so on. And then you can track how much of that item you have on your shelf, and then match it back to that when you do your stock take at the end of the period. Accounting. Bank accounts, we've had a look at that. Reports. There's a whole bunch of reports here that can help you to do pretty much anything you're going to need to do in most cases. And in the case when you can't find the report here that you need to do, you can always run a different report that gives you the information you need, and then export that data out to Excel, and then manipulate that data or edit it to produce a report in the format that you actually need for whatever it may be. So you got your balance sheets, cash summaries, profit and loss, age receivables, age payables, all your common stuff, payroll reports, fixed assets, and anything that's got a blue star next to it, you can click this, and then it's going to show up in here, your favorites, the ones you'll use most often. Down the bottom, we've got chart of accounts. We looked at that. Find and recode. We looked at all of these things. Payroll. So you can go into the main screen here. Employees is where you set up new employees with your tax file number declaration, your super choice forms, and you set them up on the system and send that to the ATO. Pay employees is where you process an actual payroll. processing leave, timesheets, super, single touch payroll, which is your reporting to the ATO. And here we've got some of the government schemes that have been available over the last year or so. JobKeeper, JobMaker. Projects is an add-on setting. You probably won't have this on your login for your usual Xero subscription, so I won't go into that. Contacts, basically this is where you set up emails, phone numbers, addresses, so forth for customers and suppliers. You can also have a look at the transactions that relate to those contacts. So here we got contacts down here. We'll go click on one. You can also import contacts from a previous system. So you can see the transactions that relate to them over the last period. And you can see some contact information here. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's a brief overview of what Xero can do. Xero is a fantastic system. You still have to, sort of think about what you're doing. It does automate things to a degree, but you still need to sort of double check it and make sure, or sense check it, and make sure that what it's doing is what should be done. With like some of the automation, the machine learning in the bank reconciliation and that sort of thing. But it's really good in how you can automate things with your bank reconciliation, bills and sales and recoding and whatever it may be. It has really sort of sped up the bookkeeping process for a lot of businesses. So it's really good, but you still, have to learn how to use it. It's not too hard, but you still got to learn how to use it. If you come across from another system, you'll pick it up pretty quickly. But that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you thought I didn't really cover or went over a bit too quickly, please let me know in the description and I'll see what I can do to help. Also, if you want to book in some training, there's a link to our website in the description. Hit us up. We're happy to help with that as well. Other than that, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.